Welcome, everyone, to the HeroX Innovation Leadership Speaker Series. I'm Jamie Elliott. I'm joined today by Harry Sangree from Seafreight Labs. Harry, thank you so much for joining. I'm excited to talk to you today. To get us started, why don't you tell us about yourself and your background in innovation?
Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you and to your audience, Jamie. It's a pleasure to be here. I am someone who's worked in innovation my whole career. I started out in software innovation, working in a startup in container shipping or import-export software. And I did that for about 20 years. And then I worked in container shipping for another 10 or 12 years. And when you're working in software, it's always a matter of getting the software to do something new that people can't do manually or through other means. So you've always got to be innovating. And I had a lot of success doing that. I worked in 3 different startups that all had exits. And after that had finished, I was looking for something new to do. And I thought, well, innovation is still what I like. Let me start a new company that's going to focus on innovation and let it be focused on the sea freight industry, because that's where I'm most knowledgeable now. And so I started Seafreight Labs back in 2019 to bring new kinds of innovation to container shipping and sea freight. And I thought a new way to do innovation in this industry would be with something called crowdsourcing or crowdsolving, asking the crowd to help container shipping solve problems they had not solved before. I had great hopes for this. I thought this would be fantastic to shake up a very old and insular industry. And I got all ready to launch my company in March of 2020. And you might remember that's when the pandemic lockdown happened. So my trip to my launch event was canceled. And everybody who I was going to meet at the launch event told me, Harry, we're not investing any money at this time. We're locking down because we don't know what's going to happen. And so my whole company was set up, but had nothing to do. So then I was uncertain how to proceed. And I was talking to my wife and she said, well, Harry, you have this capability. Why don't you try and find somebody who wants what you have? And then we brainstormed a little bit and we said, well, actually, there are some charities we give to. I wonder if they have problems they can't solve. So I called up the charities and I said, do you have any problems you can't solve? And they said, of course, yes, we have many problems. And I said, well, would you like some help solving those problems? I can bring you a crowd of people who would care and who could help you solve the problems. And they said, okay, yeah, we're willing to try that. And so I engaged with 2 organizations that we donated money to. One was called Habitat for Humanity and one is called World Vision. And I said to them, why don't you let me advise you on how to ask the crowd for help and then how to take that help and try and convert it into useful innovations that you could use in your work. And then they said yes. And so we proceeded down the path of doing that. And it actually worked. They each ran 4 challenges. They offered prize money to anybody who could solve the challenge, the problem. And 6 of the 8 challenges awarded prize money, meaning that the organization felt that the solution was good enough that they would pay money to get the intellectual property of the solution. And these were in areas like sanitation and water and housing and earthquake prevention and things like that. So I said, wow, this actually seems like even if the sea freight industry didn't want to do this, humanitarian groups can benefit. And actually, I'm more aligned with humanitarian efforts at this stage of my life than just with container shipping. In the meantime, I had joined a group called the Pledge 1% movement. And this is a movement where companies say that they're going to take some portion of their profits or their product or their equity and give it to charity to help make those charitable causes be more successful. And so I decided to take part of my efforts, my time, and donate it to these organizations to help them with their work. And that was actually how my relationship with them was set up. So that was all so successful that then I did a 3rd organization called International Rescue Committee. And with them, we did 8 challenges. And in their case, all 8 awarded prize money. And that was another big success. And in each of these cases now, in my mind, the big success happens if you award prize money and then you decide, let's go out and test this out in the world. And right now, 7 of the challenges that were awarded money are being field tested by the organizations in some way to see how can we make this idea be not just an idea on a shelf, but be something that can be used by our clients to help improve their life in some way.
Wow. It's really spectacular. You know, one of the things we like to focus on in this speaker series is how there are so many organizations out there that are doing innovation differently. Everyone has their own way of doing innovation. And I've already heard so much in just what you've given in your background, but I'm curious how you define that. How do you say structurally or in your approach or in your philosophy, you do innovation or approach innovation differently than traditionally?
Well, I call my kind of innovation humanitarian crowdsolving. And that buzzword, I actually have a complicated definition that I'm going to read for you to help you get a lot of meat out of that. So humanitarian crowdsolving is a tool whose use is intended to enable large global humanitarian organizations to do their work more effectively, that is better, faster, and or cheaper, by tapping into the knowledge and expertise of the global crowd to find new ways to do important program-related tasks of the sponsoring humanitarian organization. So that's a long definition, but the key aspects of it are, first, it's a tool. Crowdsolving does not work for all kinds of problems. It doesn't work in every situation. It's designed for helping a humanitarian organization find somebody out in the world who might know how to do something that they don't know how to do internally, and then getting that knowledge to go from that other person to them. So that's why it's just a tool. The kind of work that I'm doing is focused on large global humanitarian groups because I'm just one person and I really can't achieve anything by myself. But these organizations have global reach. They have knowledge of the global set of problems, and they are hindered in their work by these problems. So if I and the global crowd as a mass, if we can help them with their work, then that's what we want to do. And the whole goal is to help them do their work better than they're doing it now. So every organization is trying to do the best they can, and they're doing great work. I could never do anything close to what they're doing. But everyone can improve also. There's still more people out there who need help than who are getting help. And if there's some way to make the dollars go further, then let's take that. Let's not just pretend we don't need it. Everyone wants to get better and do things faster, cheaper, or better in some way. And oftentimes the knowledge about how to do that is out there somewhere. It's just the organization doesn't know who to ask. Like in your own organization, everyone who you have has helped you all they can, but there's still problems. And so this is just a way to expand the reach that you have in asking for help to a lot more people. And if you ask in the right way, then you can get the right kind of people to then come help you. And then the end result should be that they can take this idea, they can implement it in their organization, it can change how they do their work, and then they will help the clients that they serve be better served, however they measure that. In many different ways, humanitarian groups measure their work, and I don't have any knowledge about that. I just want them to, whatever it is, make it come out better. That's what I call humanitarian crowdsolving, and that's how I see the area of innovation.
I think it's such an interesting dynamic because, especially the way you explain it, the two go so well hand in hand. At the moment, they are not so often the default to go work together in terms of crowd solving and humanitarian efforts. What I've seen, being lucky enough to get to work on so many challenge competitions, is that what comes with the crowd solving aspect is you have individuals and teams that not only love to solve problems, but they're passionate about solving important problems. They're passionate about being a part of something that's bigger than themselves and making a difference in the world and being a positive influence in the world. And crowd solving gives them that opportunity to do that. And crowd solving for humanitarian efforts is such an added bonus. And so I think you're really onto something here. I think you've been wrapping up a challenge recently. If you could tell us about that and anything else you're working on currently.
Yeah, so I have been wrapping up a challenge now for Habitat for Humanity. It's actually running on HeroX right now, and we are just in the process of picking our finalists. But the story behind it is very interesting, and it might be educational for people to hear about. Habitat for Humanity, one of the 4 challenges they ran back in 2020 to 22 was asking the crowd to give them a way to reduce the number of mosquitoes entering a home and to make people want to be inside their home that had less mosquitoes in it as a way to reduce malaria affecting children and adults in communities where malaria is a problem. People, when it's hot and the people sit outside because it's too hot to sit inside, and the mosquitoes are all outside, and mosquitoes bite the people, and then they get malaria. And that's been happening ever since time began. Habitat said, well, what if we could come up with a way to make people want to be inside and make inside safer? Then we might get less malaria incidents. They ran this challenge back in 2020, or 2021, I think it was. And they had a $20,000 prize. They got 75 submissions from 56 different countries. And somebody from India won the challenge. And his idea was a tube, a piece of pipe. But the other thing was it had to be under $200 to make the whole house be protected. So he came up with a tube, which had some screening in the middle of it. And you put the tube in the walls, all around the walls. And that would make ventilation come in, but mosquitoes couldn't come in. With this tubing and with screening around the eaves, his idea was you get less mosquitoes inside, but you would get ventilation inside. And there's a group in Kenya called KEMRI, Kenya Malaria Research Institute. They did a extensive test of this design, and they found, I think it was like 86% less mosquitoes came inside the modified house than the control house, which had not been modified. This is caused mainly by putting screening in the eaves, but also having the ventilation there to have no mosquitoes come into the ventilation into the holes. Couldn't test much about the temperature reduction inside in that test, but the mosquito drop was so impressive that everyone was very interested in this. And so Habitat did a test in a village there. And the villagers said, oh, we love the idea of less mosquitoes, but these air cavities, they're called, are terrible. People can see us inside the house at night, and we have no privacy. And when it's cold outside, the cold air comes in, and we don't like that. So we don't want to use these air cavities, even though they get a lot less mosquitoes. But we would love to have you give us some nice free windows if you want to do that. So Habitat did give them free windows to thank them for their effort. But that was not a long-term solution because they couldn't have done that beforehand. So then we ran now a second challenge, a follow-up challenge to the first challenge, and we ran this one on HeroX. And this challenge was for under $60, can you make some kind of air ventilation system for a home? These are mud homes in villages that will lower the temperature inside, not allow mosquitoes in, will give people privacy, and will give people a way to control against cold.
Wow.
And there were a couple of other things I wanted to do also. And with that challenge, we have a $24,000 prize pool for that one. And we got 55 submissions from 30 different countries. And now we're down to 5 finalists that we're going to show to the villagers to get them to vote on the final ones, to pick 3 that they want to test in their village. And then we'll pick a winner from that. So that gives you an example of a number of things we learn from that. One is that the crowd is global. They come from all over the world. Another is that a lot of people will respond to a challenge like this. And as you were saying, respond because they want to help. They think this is the problem. It's not good. People die of malaria, especially children, but anybody. And if I could help fix that, that'd be great. If I could help fix that and get paid for it, even better. And so then people respond from all over the world. And then the process is an iterative process, and it's just a step along the way to a solution. So it's not like magic where somebody comes up with a winning answer and then the problem goes away. The output of a challenge like this is an idea that can then be developed and perfected. And that's what Habitat for Humanity is doing now with that challenge. They perfected it. It didn't really meet all the needs of the village. And so they went back to the crowd again, ran a second challenge, more focused this time to actually say, we want to have a video. In the challenge, we actually asked for a video of your answer to prove that AI had not made it and to prove that it actually could be built. And so all of our solvers submitted videos with their written responses so that we could see what it looked like and how it might appear for a villager.
That's great. And with this project, I know you've done some writing and some analysis of your humanitarian crowdsolving projects. What kind of impact are you seeing with your efforts?
So I've been involved as a project advisor with 3 global NGOs, World Vision, Habitat for Humanity, and International Rescue Committee. And with them, I've done 17 humanitarian crowdsolving challenges. And 15 of those had awards given to them. So it's an 88% success rate, which in the area of innovation, anything more than like 50% is good. So 88% is a very nice metric. And that's a tribute to the platforms that we run on and the process that we follow. We've had 1,167 submissions from at least 82 different countries. So the things have come from all over the world. I've read all the submissions, each one of them. As project advisor, I helped weed out the wheat from the chaff and get down to the good ones. And then the humanitarian organization decides on who wins. But I help them weed out the ones that are not winners. We've had 41 winners altogether across all the challenges. And the NGOs have offered over $300,000 of prize money to solvers around the world. So that's a lot of proof points that the crowd can be helpful to a humanitarian organization if it has some problems it can't solve and it needs some new ideas. The crowd is a great place for new ideas, and it's a great place for potential solutions that could be valuable. I have one more story if you have time to hear it.
I would love to.
There's the IRC, International Rescue Committee. They ran a challenge on how could we ship medical supplies better to rural clinics in developing countries than we do now. Right now, we use cardboard boxes. And when the materials get delivered to the rural clinic, they throw away the box and that's it. So there's a number of problems with that. The box is creating waste in the destination. The box, if it rains or goes through water areas, the box gets soggy and then the stuff inside can be damaged. There's a lot of dust in many of the places these boxes go. And so a lot of dust can get into the medicines and the supplies, and that can cause problems. And then heat is a problem inside the boxes. Also, another problem is theft. So they were looking for somebody to invent something that would be better than cardboard boxes in those 4 areas: theft, heat, water protection, and dust protection. They ran a challenge offering a prize of $25,000. They had 180 different people who responded as registration to it. And they got 92 submissions from 49 different countries. The winners actually were very cool. They were 2 recent graduates who had heard about the challenge, not from the challenge hosting platform, but from a partner organization that is called Engineering for Change. And they publicized the problem to their audience. And these 2 young people heard about it, one in Ghana and one in Rwanda. So neither are from the country. The country with Sierra Leone was the target market where they were trying to solve this initially. And these people came up with the idea of using polypropylene reusable boxes that you would buy as flat polypropylene panels with certain slits in them, so you could fold them up to make them be the medicine boxes. But then when you're finished with the shipment, you could fold them back down flat again and then ship them back to the distribution center that sent the drugs out and reuse them again. The target price was $14.80 per year. It had to cost less than that. That's what they were spending right now for the cardboard boxes by buying them 4 times a year to make them for the product and be better in these different areas, dust and water and such. And the IRC believes it will be cheaper and better, a number of the criteria, than what they're using now. They actually just shipped 500 test units to one of their facilities somewhere in Africa to test out head to head against the cardboard boxes. So they're going to take half the medical shipment in cardboard boxes and half in the polypropylene boxes, and they ship them and see how the goods get to the destination, and then see if they can actually fold the thing back down and then send it back to be reused again to prove out the whole theory. But to your point about how our solvers engaged, the solvers didn't just do this to try and win money. They did this
Right.
because they wanted to help. And so the
Yeah.
solvers have now volunteered their time after they won the money to help the IRC with design changes and slight tweaks that need to be done. And they've been advising the IRC on questions that have come up in the whole process because they want to see their innovation be used in real life. And that's part of what their motivation was and is. So the IRC just got 2 new volunteers to help them with their work that they would never have met and would never have had a way to engage with except for humanitarian crowdsolving.
It's such a interesting an add-on dynamic of crowdsolving is that by engaging the crowd, the host organization, the sponsoring organization, gets a lot of great press because they get to talk about being innovative, doing things a different way than they typically would, listening to the voices of other than the typical players. And what I mean by that are the typical organizations that would apply for a grant or a contract or bid on a contract. And crowdsolving often lowers that barrier to entry, where normally a team of 2 engineers might not typically go after a contract that was meant to solve this problem, or might not have the resources to be able to go after that contract if they don't know how to write a bid or a proposal. They've never done that aspect of the business before. But crowdsolving allows them to compete against anyone else. And like I said, it brings in this energy of the crowd we're looking for the best ideas. And so we want to hear from everyone. It's really great.
Yeah, I call it the win-win-win
Yeah,
methodology. So
indeed.
the end user, the clients that are out in the world that the organization they're trying to solve, they win, hopefully, because they get served better by the NGO. They get better sanitation or better housing or less mosquitoes or medicines that are not damaged on the way or whatever the benefit is. Seeker, the organization that runs the challenge, they win in many different ways. They win because, as you said, they get an answer to a problem that they had. They get a story of innovation that they can share with donors that says, we're trying to think outside of the box and we're trying new things and we're trying to get help from everybody in the world, was what crowdsolving is, to do our job better. We're not just sitting around looking at the same old people. They also get partnerships with organizations that they might not have had before. Sometimes organizations respond to the challenge, or organizations help them in promoting the challenge. Like in the case of IRC, they have now a partnership with Engineering for Change. First, it was a marketing partnership, but then they invited Engineering for Change. Would you be willing to give us some judges to help us do judging of other challenges? And Engineering for Change said, yeah, we have engineers who like to do that kind of work. Let us connect you to some of them. And that partnership turned into that. And then Engineer for Change now is doing some R&D work on one of the challenges that the IRC ran to make it better and to help them improve the design. So that partnership is very valuable. It can also lead to donations of money. Habitat received $1 million grant from a large UK grant organization because of this mosquito air cavity solution. Not only because of that, but because it showed that Habitat was working on the problem and Habitat had creative ideas for how to tackle the problem. And this foundation felt that investing money there would give them more resources to pursue more things. And so they said that the grant was partly driven by the fact that the challenge had happened and was successful. So it can be another win for them. it also is a way to engage their employees in the work besides just doing their job. Employees can try and find places to test innovation or can try and promote it to their networks, the problem statement. And the last thing I can give them is new volunteers. As I said, these two young people are volunteering to help in the box improvement project, but the IRC got volunteers in lighting. They got volunteers on fossil fuel reduction in farming. And so there's a lot of different ways new kinds of volunteers can plug in who might not have had a way to plug in the traditional, just write a check model
Right.
for fundraising. The solver also makes as a win because, of course, if they win the challenge, they win money. But it's not just that. They also get the satisfaction of working to try and help solve a global problem that normally they wouldn't have any way to participate in. But when you're submitting something in a challenge like this, then you actually are being part of trying to find a solution to a pressing human problem. And this is very satisfying to many different solvers. So that's why I call it a win-win-win, because the end recipient, the people out in the world who are NGOs trying to help, they can benefit. The NGO benefits in those many ways I listed off, and the winning solvers also benefit.
Yeah, it's win-win-win, but I think the wins for each of them, as you mentioned, it's exponential. So if there are humanitarian organizations or philanthropists like yourself or innovators, what advice would you have for others working in similar fields, trying to do exactly what you're doing?
Well, I've always thought that what I'm doing is interesting, but I'd like to make sure other people can benefit from what I've learned, good and bad. And so I have a blog on my website, seafreightlabs.com/blog, where I talk about what the different things I learned about crowdsolving. So I have a case study about the IRC, the most recent project I worked on their 8 crowdsolving efforts that they did. I have a whole series of blog entries called Crowdsolving 101, where I talk about how much it costs to do crowdsolving, how long it takes to do crowdsolving, how engaged you can be with different parts of the world with crowdsolving. So people who are thinking first of all, if you think you need help on any problem that you have, the crowd could be a good tool to help you. And so if you read through my blogs, you'll be able to see whether the crowd would be helpful in that kind of problem. The crowd can't solve every problem. I remember one early on engagement with the IRC, somebody said, well, can you solve inflation in Sierra Leone? We have a big problem with inflation. And I said, I'm sorry, the crowd can't solve everything. It can only solve something that somebody in the world somewhere has solved. And inflation is not one of those things, so we can't solve that. And so we had to keep looking for other kinds of problems that would be good. But my blog has many entries that would be very helpful for people to read about. And then one of the blog entries is the 10 Ps of picking a partner for crowdsolving. And so that would be the place you could get ideas for how to find a vendor to work with you. I strongly advise that you have somebody who knows how to do it, who helps you do it in the beginning, because you can do it well and be successful, or you can do it poorly and not be successful. And it's much better to do it well and be successful. And that's where people like HeroX and the expertise that you have and the processes that you have can help people navigate the process of defining their challenge. But first, picking a good problem, then defining the actual problem statement, and then marketing the challenge out to the world so the world knows about it, and then evaluating all the submissions. Those are the 4 major steps. And in each of those steps, there's expertise needed to make it so it works the way we want. And that's why having a coach or a partner or a project advisor, what I serve as to my organizations, is such a valuable thing to have.
Great. Excellent. How could our listeners, we will absolutely post the links to your blog, to your website, to your challenges with the description of this. Anything else you want to share with the listeners on how they can learn more or get involved?
I just want to encourage anyone who's listening to not be afraid of thinking about trying something new. Habitat for Humanity and World Vision both tried this with me when I had not ever done it before, and they had never done it before. but we just trusted that somebody out in the world might be helpful. And we found out that was true. So I think that if you are working for a humanitarian organization and you wish you could get some help, but you don't know who to ask or how to get it, the crowd could be a great place to go to. And it doesn't cost that much money to run a challenge. So it's something that maybe you could get your organization to try, and you might be very pleasantly surprised with what kinds of results come out of it.
Good. Excellent, Harry. Thank you so much for your time. This has been very enlightening and I think empowering. I think our listeners are really going to appreciate the humanitarian aspects that you bring to this, that you bring to innovation. Thanks for all the work that you do. It is making a positive impact in the world, and we all really appreciate it. It's been so great to get to work with you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for the chance to talk about humanitarian crowdsolving. I love talking about it because I really am a believer in what it can do to help all those different parties, the people we're trying to help and the NGOs who are trying to help them, and then the people who win money.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.